places that are beautiful because of what you see, and then there are places that make you feel like you've stepped into another world. The Hoh Rain Forest in Washington is one of those places. As I started driving deeper into the Olympic Peninsula, the landscape slowly began to change. The roads became quieter, the trees became taller, and everything around me started getting greener. And then I realized something. I wasn't just driving into a forest. I was driving into one of the most remarkable ecosystems in the United States. Welcome to the Hoh Rain Forest. As I started walking along the trail, I honestly didn't know where to look first. The trees are enormous, the moss is everywhere, the ferns cover the forest floor, and some of these trees have been standing here for hundreds of years. You look up and up and up, and eventually you realize just how small you are. Some of the giant trees here can reach around 250 feet tall. That's roughly the height of a 25-story building. But what really fascinated me wasn't just how big the trees were, it was how the entire forest seems to recycle itself. Look at the fallen trees lying across the forest floor. At first, you might think they're just dead trees, but they're actually part of the next generation. They're called nurse logs. As these massive trees slowly decay, they become a place where new plants and trees can grow. Seeds land on them, moss covers them, fungi break them down, and eventually young trees grow right out of the old tree. So the tree that falls doesn't really disappear. It becomes part of the next forest. That's probably one of the coolest things about the Hoh. Here, death isn't really the end. It's part of the process that creates new life. The first thing that hits you when you arrive here isn't actually the trees. It's the silence. You can hear the wind moving through the branches, birds somewhere in the distance, water flowing through the forest, and if you're lucky, maybe even the sound of rain falling through the canopy. It's almost hard to believe that a place this green exists in the United States, but here's something that makes the Hoh even more incredible. This forest can receive around 140 inches of precipitation every year. That's more than 11 feet of rain, and some parts of Olympic National Park's temperate rainforest receive even more. So when you look around and see moss covering almost everything, that's not an accident. The entire forest is basically built around water. Pacific storms move inland and hit the Olympic Mountains. As the moist air rises over the mountains, it cools and releases enormous amounts of rain. And that constant moisture creates the perfect environment for this forest to thrive. It's one of the finest remaining examples of temperate rainforest in the lower 48 states. And then there's the Hoh River. The river begins high in the Olympic Mountains, near glacier-covered Mount Olympus, and travels roughly 50 miles toward the Pacific Ocean. Along the way, it carries water, sediment, and nutrients through the forest. And here's something I found really fascinating. The forest and the river actually depend on each other. The river brings nutrients and shapes the landscape. The trees stabilize the riverbanks, and when trees fall into the river, they can create pools and shelter for fish. Eventually, salmon return from the ocean, and when those salmon die after spawning, their bodies bring nutrients from the ocean back into the forest. So in a way, the ocean feeds the forest protects the river, and the river connects everything together. It's one giant natural cycle. And then there's the moss, so much moss. It's hanging from branches, covering tree trunks, carpeting the ground. At certain points, it almost feels like the entire forest has been painted green. But moss isn't just here for the scenery. The Hoh's incredibly wet environment allows hundreds of species of mosses, lichens, and other plants to thrive. And some trees have so much growth on them that they almost look like they're wearing giant green coats. This is why the Hoh doesn't feel like an ordinary forest. It feels ancient, almost prehistoric, like you're walking through a world that existed long before we did. One of the trails I explored was the Hall of Mosses, and honestly, the name couldn't be more perfect. It's a relatively short trail, but every few steps, there was something different to see. A giant tree covered in moss, roots twisting across the ground, tiny plants growing out of fallen logs, sunlight breaking through the canopy, and sometimes absolutely nothing but green. That's when you start slowing down. You stop checking your phone. You stop thinking about where you're going next, and you just walk. I think that's what makes places like this special. They force you to slow down. But the Hoh isn't just about plants. This forest is also home to one of the most incredible animals in the Pacific Northwest, the Roosevelt elk. These are the largest variety of elk in in North America. A large male can weigh up to around 1,100 pounds, and the Hoh Valley is home to a significant population of them. The elk actually play an important role in the forest. By feeding on ferns and other vegetation, they help shape the understory of the rainforest. So even the animals are part of the forest's balance. Everything here is connected. The rain feeds the trees provide habitat, the fallen trees create new soil, the plants feed the animals, and the animals influence the plants. It's an ecosystem where almost nothing is wasted. And as I walked back toward the entrance, I took one last look at the forest. The same trees were still standing, the same moss was still covering the branches, the river was still moving. And somewhere in the distance, the forest was continuing its endless cycle of growth, decay, and renewal. Maybe that's why the Hoh Rain Forest stays with you, because you don't just visit a place like this. For a few hours, you become part of it, and when you finally leave, you realize something. The forest didn't really change, you did. And maybe that's what travel is supposed to do, not just show us somewhere beautiful, but make us see the world a little differently when we go home.